it really is only designed for a temporary incident abroad, okay, but you really need to top up that cover with a proper travel insurance plan. And the point about travel disruption, Frank, you're quite right, because all of the policies, you need to ensure that you have cancellation and curtailment, trip disruption, medical emergencies that tops up your private health insurance plan. And I think Siobhan mentioned earlier on the European health insurance card if you're going to Europe. That's a really important document to bring with you, because it does entitle you to the public health services of the country you're visiting, either free of charge or at a reduced rate.
And Garrod, can I ask you to explain in more detail to people what travel disruption cover is? Because you would assume that that is part of any policy, but it's not. It's something extra. How much extra does it cost? When can people avail of it? Can they do it now, for instance?
Yeah, I should say, I know other insurance companies have this as an add-on with VHI's multi-trip coverage. It's part of our cancellation and curtailment benefit. Okay.
And what's different to that than what's in a standard policy?
So effectively, really, if you have a trip cancellation, if you have a curtailment, if you have a cancellation for all various reasons that have been cited down, you have coverage up to about €10,000 if you're forced to cancel your trip. And there's a whole broad range of circumstances. Obviously, the coronavirus example that we referenced earlier on, that if you've booked let's take the family booking their holiday, let's just say to Portugal in June. At the moment, Portugal is not in the listed area as affected. You bought your travel insurance, you bought your holiday, and say come June, hopefully not, the particular Portugal becomes an affected area, then that's when cancellation coverage kicks in, which is really covering the cost of your holiday, your cancellation and flights, etc., etc.
And you say VHI has that already, but if you were to contact another company and buy this as an add-on, is there a lead-in period to it?
Yeah, I understand there's particular, so if you buy it, there may be a 7-day, 14-day. I'm not quite sure, Samantha, but we took a decision earlier on to roll all of those particular variables into our cancellation and curtailment benefit. I think travel disruption is a broad brush, to be honest with you. There's all sorts of circumstances that travel disruption can happen. So we take the view that it's trip disruption, cancellation, curtailment. We put it in as one singular benefit.
Okay, Siobhan McGuire, can I ask you about holidays booked in Ireland? Are people covered for those with a travel insurance policy, or is it just foreign travel?
It depends on the actual policy that you take out. So there are different levels of policy. You have the most basic level that would protect you in terms of, I guess, luggage going missing, that kind of thing, flight cancellation. But if you're in Ireland and you actually don't need the travel insurance to apply to any of the trips here, there is one little thing you can do now if you're going to book somewhere. If you have to travel, make sure that you get somewhere that has a free cancellation policy. That allows you to cancel right up to the day before in some instances without losing any money. Otherwise, there are other policies that you can get that allow you to get a partial refund back.
And Fran McNulty, can I ask you about credit card protection, which we often hear in these scenarios? If people have booked these trips on credit cards, do they have any more come back in these circumstances, or is it just the same as normal?
No, there is a level of cover. Of course, it depends when you bought the particular package, or you booked the particular holiday or the flights in particular. And then, what it comes down to constantly, like every situation is specific and individual. Every company has different terms and conditions, and so really, like, the generalities of this are difficult to get into because everyone is so specific. And it's like Siobhan mentioned there with the being penalised if you cancel a booking. Some hotels or resorts have really reasonable cancellation fees. Some have none. Some are very reasonable. And there are others you will contact and you will deal with. And see it myself on an ongoing basis. Because of the nature of our jobs, we tend not to be able to plan our lives, so you have to cancel things when news breaks. And many places that do have cancellation penalties in place will be reasonable with you when you contact them. They won't force you to rebook, but they may not apply a charge, and that can, I think when we're beginning to see these situations develop and expand, you're going to see places begin to adapt and be more reasonable. Like, there is another reality that the If you look at some of the rates for flights online, they're quite cheap. Flights to a number of destinations. You look at the price of hotels in this country at the moment, they're going up quite a lot because people aren't going away. Because we do travel a lot now. People seem to have more money in their pockets, so they're travelling, but they're staying at home now. So we're seeing prices in resorts and hotels around the country go up because people are staying at home.
Garoj Gilly of VHI Healthcare, can I ask you what happens in the case of policies or entitlements being disputed? Where do people go if their insurance company is not paying out for them as they might have expected?
Yeah, I think all insurance companies are very focused around treating each particular claim that presents fairly and reasonable, and certainly we take the view that we want to make sure that our customer is taken care of. But you're right, disputes do happen, and the Financial Services Ombudsman encourages all insurance companies to get into a point where there's dispute resolution conversations between the customer and the insurance company before it goes to a full adjudication. So the customer is very much protected, because failing in terms of their engagement with the insurance company, they do have redress to make a particular case to the Financial Services Ombudsman.
Siobhan Maguire, can I put another question that we received from a listener? It says, myself and 8 of my family have already booked flights and accommodation in New York State in July. Will the virus have run its course by then? You might need your crystal ball for that one. But will airlines and insurance companies provide refunds?
If there's an issue with somebody travelling in the party that, for whatever health reason they can't travel, they can definitely make their case. 8 of them travelling, 8 deciding not to travel, and New York not being an area where the Department of Foreign Affairs is advising against non-essential travel, then no, you won't get your money back. There is a huge level of goodwill going on at the moment where the travel industry, insurance industry, hotel industry, airline industry is concerned, because all of this is unprecedented. They are suffering. We have flights carrying very few people to and from destinations. Fran pointed out earlier you could still get flights to Italy, bizarrely. But airlines will take on board any kind of particular circumstances, including that level of anxiety of going away. July is a long way away. I wouldn't be advising on cancelling anything if you have booked something, even if you've not got your travel insurance in place, because the way things are happening at the moment, we have things changing on a daily basis. Yesterday, people flying to Rome, for example, wouldn't have been entitled to any kind of comeback on or compensation on their flights. Today, that's a completely different story. So I would just sit tight and see how this levels out.
Speaking of people in Rome and in Italy in general, what are their rights if they're in the country and it's gone into lockdown? Are they able to return home, Siobhan, do you know?
Yes, they are at the moment. And actually, airlines are accommodating people that are trying to, get back home. I don't know how that's going to change. I know the Taoiseach there earlier mentioned that flights will be among the discussions at the council today in relation to how we cope with the level of people coming to and from Ireland. For example, last night I was able to find 39 flights coming from Milan to Ireland, which is really odd, under the circumstances. But there are people who need to get home, and they can get home.
And Fran, the cruise industry has been in a lot of focus during the COVID-19 outbreak, and we've had some questions from listeners about one cruise they had that they were able to get a refund on, another that they couldn't. What is the situation with the cruise industry at the moment?
It's severely hit because the reality is this: if there's an outbreak of coronavirus, the last place you want to be is on a cruise ship. It's such a confined space, you're so limited, and that is why we've seen right around the world, the cruise industry, somebody got a refund. I'd like to know if they got it directly from the cruise operator themselves. They've been very slow to give full refunds, many of them giving 50% refunds because they know they have a loyal customer base. They know they have people who have money and will probably spend again. But when you see, I think what has really been scary is when you see the outbreaks on cruise ships and you see how quickly it travels and how people are impacted. It really is it's devastating. But people are tending to get 50% refunds. Again, travel insurance is key here for people who may have policies, who may want to cancel their trip, may have a good reason to do so, and their insurance company may accept that and in turn pay out. But the cruise industry is being severely hit by this. So is the airline industry, it has to be said, and travel industries generally. I certainly wouldn't like to be in a position where I had invested 5 or 10,000 euro in a cruise and trying to get my money back, because it's going to be extremely difficult.
And Siobhan, that flexibility you spoke about, the force majeure approach that the industry was taking, is that something we're seeing with the cruise industry as well?
We are now, actually, and things have only changed in the last day or so. The likes of Royal Caribbean, one of the larger companies, for example, have launched, if you'll pardon the pun, the Cruise with Confidence package. And that basically allows anyone who has a cruise booked from now to July to cancel. You must cancel within 48 hours, but you'll receive a future cruise credit, which means that you'll get the pretty much the full refund, but which you'll then use on a trip later. And then we had Princess Cruises, which are involved in that cruise that's ported in America at the moment, and they were quite I guess they were reluctant to kind of get involved in the whole kind of refund, cancellation, compensation debate, but they too have now temporarily revised cancellation policies. And what that means now is that in relation to some departures, clients can cancel up to 72 hours before sailing, and like that they get their future cruise credit for 100% of cancellation fees.
Garoj Gilly from VHI, can I ask you about premiums in light of what's happening here? Will rises be inevitable because there are going to be a lot of costs on your industry?
Yeah, it's very, very early to say, Samantha. Certainly we have no plans at the moment to adjust pricing. We're comfortable with our reserving. We're comfortable that we're able to manage this particular unforeseen event. But I think it's inevitable if claims happen to be of a high volume and high value over the next 12 months. Conversations will happen between insurance companies and their underwriters, etc., with a view to potentially looking at premiums. But right now, we don't have any clear visibility. I mean, we are familiar with a number of cases we're working on at the moment. They are primarily medical expenses, which is normally what would happen anyway when you take out travel insurance, but we haven't seen any major set of claims coming our way as yet.
And Garoj, can I ask you about the exclusions that would be in place for somebody with a pre-existing medical condition? Imagine a scenario where somebody, maybe has taken out insurance more recently and that pre-existing condition is excluded, say asthma or something, but then they travel and contract COVID-19. Where do they stand then?
That's a very good question. We do have in the private medical insurance, domestic health insurance we'll call it, in Ireland, a particular set of conditions which exclude illnesses that are present prior to joining a health insurance scheme for 5 years, okay? But your particular question kind of focuses on somebody contracting a medical emergency, as in coronavirus. So we tend to take a medical emergency and an accident as something that's completely unforeseen, and we don't apply the pre-existing rule on these occasions. Okay, so if you went abroad, for instance, and you had a pre-existing illness and you didn't fulfil your waiting period, and you happened to go to hospital for that condition, then yes, the pre-existing condition would apply. But in the context of coronavirus, it's new, it's not pre-existing, it's a medical emergency, and therefore cover would be available.
Siobhan Maguire, you mentioned weddings earlier. That must be a massive concern for people who are organising weddings abroad at the moment. What do we know about what's covered and what's not?
So again, it depends on the affected areas. Anecdotally, wedding insurance policies have increased by 4,500 in the last couple of weeks. People, that Northern Italy, for example, is hugely popular as a wedding venue. But people who had booked weddings there will find themselves probably in a little bit of trouble trying to get all of their money back. What you're dealing with is separate bookings in a lot of instances. Under European consumer legislation, when you make a booking under an agent for everything, your rights are actually a little bit more stronger than making separate bookings. So in the case of a wedding, you would have booked a hotel, you would have booked your flights, you probably would have reserved quite a lot of flights for people travelling over with you. So you have to go to each individual party to try and get your money back. Now, the fact that the Department of Foreign Affairs is advising against all non-essential travel means that the airlines should be something that won't be too much of a stickler in terms of getting your money back. The accommodation, however, might be a different story.
And Fran McNulty, if you were lucky enough to grab tickets to either the Euro 2020 tournament or the Olympics, you must be asking questions right now as to where you stand. Is there any indication now as to where those people will be in a couple of months' time?
It's too far out to say, Samantha. You would reckon that, if you listen to all of the experts, it's still going to be around. Quite what the level of impact will be at that point, or how we will adapt to deal with this new reality, remains to be seen. But anybody who has travel plans like that, they're going to be extremely anxious. And Siobhan referred to it earlier there about, I think it was somebody who had something booked in July to the States, just hold out. I just think people... It is your natural reaction to pull back when you see that there's something happening like this. I think actually the passage of time will help a lot. We see that, traditionally some companies who take a very hard line on cancellation policies are beginning to adapt. The entire industry is beginning to adapt. See people, I think one of the first queries when this came out that we dealt with on air was somebody who had a wedding booked in northern Italy and was asking, should they cancel it? And if I remember the timeline correctly, I think that person unfortunately probably has had to cancel it. But it's not only all of those things Siobhan spoke about. It's not just the florist, the photographer, the wedding venue, the food, maybe after parties and everything else. Remember, all of your guests who are travelling as well have their individual plans. So the level of disruption and the possible loss of money is absolutely huge. We're seeing a situation now where heads of state are sitting down today to discuss this, European heads of state. They're going to have a look at kind of movement. A lot of concern been expressed by people about the fact that at the weekend quite a number of people were coming into the country. Siobhan referencing there are 39 flights coming from Milan. People are continuing to move and travel. I'm hearing stories every day of people whose work colleagues have been abroad, some of them to affected areas, and they're returning to work the next day after they come back. A lot of concerns and questions have been raised about movement. Who knows what's going to happen in terms of movement limitations or plans, or the authorities coming up with contingencies to try and curb the spread of it, and how it will impact big events, and in particular big sporting events down the line. There's one thing is sure. We are going to have to rethink everything we do and how we do it in the coming months. Everything we do.
Siobhan, the last question to you. Where do people go if they generally want more information on their rights in this area?
Yeah, there are plenty of really good websites out there, Samantha. There's the European Consumer Centre, that's ECC Ireland. And there's the Competition and Consumer Protection Commission, ccpc.ie. And then in relation to your flight rights, there's flightrights.ie. Now that's run by the Commission for Aviation Regulation. I would imagine they're going to be kept extremely busy in the coming weeks and months. But if you have an issue, first flag it with your airline and your accommodation, and then you can make a formal complaint through the likes of flightrights.ie.
And just staying with that, Garode, Gilly and VHI, are people able to get through to you at the moment with the volume of calls you must be getting?
Yeah, we have, obviously a lot of customers ringing us, but we have put together, based on customer feedback over the last couple of weeks, a frequently asked question summary, and we've posted that to our website. I understand all the other travel insurance companies have done likewise, so I would urge our customers to go into vhi.ie. all of the typical type questions that are being asked of us right now will be addressed in that frequently asked question summary on our website.
The other thing, Samantha, people should probably do if they have travel plans in the future is the Department of Foreign Affairs has an app called TravelWise. It's really, really good. You can set up alerts for various countries so that if the situation is changing in a country that you're travelling to, the app will actually alert you to that. It will give you all the travel advisories you need. It's called TravelWise, and you can download it for iOS or Android. It's really, really useful.
OK, thank you all for that advice. RT's Consumer Affairs correspondent Fran McNulty, Siobhan Maguire, consumer journalist, and Garode Gilly, Head of Customer Services at VHI Healthcare. Now, this discussion will be published on our webpage as a podcast, which you can download anytime, and it'll also be available as a Morning Ireland Extra podcast. Thanks for listening.